is up, hotties? Welcome back to another episode of Stay Hot. I'm Blaiden Kirk, joined as always by my two favorite co-hosts of all time, Matthew Spanauer and Theo Ash. And today we are here to do our first fantasy episode of 2025 as we are doing a Dynasty rookie mock draft where we're going to draft an entire 3-round rookie Dynasty draft with 12 teams, but we're going to make every single pick ourselves. So I'm going to have the first pick, Matt's going to have the second pick, Theo's going to have the third pick, and we're going to do 36 sequential picks all here on Stay Hot. So before we get into that, and before we get into, of course, the Derek Carr retirement news, Matt, Theo, how are you guys doing on this beautiful Mother's Day Sunday?
Shout out the mom for sure.
Shout out.
As we're recording this. I thought we were going to brunch. We were going to dinner. I was in Columbus, drove back, sat down in my chair, and basically turned that camera on, recording now. Got a little yard work done as well. Cleaned out some stuff that I had sitting from high school in the house, and then I watched Thunder Nuggets before going to dinner. I've been busy. I've been all over the place. And
where'd you go to dinner?
101 Beer Kitchen.
Nice.
So I feel very accomplished right now is basically what I'm trying to get at, and I'm excited to record this episode. I'm excited about Dynasty rankings. I think Dynasty football is fun.
You are a big Dynasty guy.
I am.
But Theo, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. I was at 7-Eleven earlier, and I bought a Red Bull and a bag of goldfish, and my total was 7-Eleven.
Dude,
and a buzzer went off and a bunch of confetti came down from the ceiling, and they handed me a golden ticket with an address on it. And I don't know where it leads me to, but I'm supposed to be there tomorrow.
It leads you to my house, brother.
You're the 7-Eleven grand prize? That would be so disappointing.
Real.
So, it's been good.
So you had a pretty big day as well.
Big day, yeah. And I was camping this weekend. I'm kind of burying the lead with my 7-Eleven trip. I was camping at the top of a very tall hill, which was kind of asked to walk up and down, but it was a good view once you were up there.
Can I ask, at what point does a tall hill become a mountain?
Probably like there's a scientific answer for this, but maybe like 6,000 feet or something.
All right,
you're in Denver, so really it's pretty.
You can just tell it visually. Like when you look to the west, there are hills and there are mountains, and the mountains come after the hills. If there's snow on the top of them, it's a mountain.
Like average grade of angle, right? Like how steep the incline is. But I don't know if you had like a big mound hill, but it went like, it was taller than Everest, that's definitely going to be a mountain, even if it is just like walking with your hands in your pocket up the whole thing. So I don't know. It probably is a height.
It's got to be more than 1,000 feet above its surrounding area to be a mountain. This was not 1,000 feet. This was just a steep climb. But yeah, it was a good weekend. Obviously talked to my mom. She lives in Minnesota though, so I couldn't go see her, unfortunately. But shout out the moms out there who are listening to this podcast, trying to get their knowledge up about ball, or maybe just checking in on their boys. More likely.
There's at least a couple of moms, I suspect, might do that every once in a while. Speaking of boys who need to be checked up on, Derek Carr retired the other day. Kind of changes the outlook for the Saints. We kind of already knew that he was probably not going to play. The Saints drafted a quarterback in the second round, made it really seem like he wasn't going to play. And now we learn that the shoulder is not only so bad that he might miss all of next season, it's so bad that he's calling it, I'd say, a little bit earlier than you'd expect. Definitely.
I mean, I remember in 2022 and 2021 when Derek Carr was a potential sweepstakes quarterback to gain. I wanted him in Cleveland so bad. He's been one of my favorite quarterbacks in the league for a long time. So breaks my heart to see him go. But yeah, it's crazy that he was just like, nah, man, like it's not worth it at this point. For it to be that bad, it has to be like, labrum-esque.
I don't know. I get it. Like, not to center my team, but when Cam Newton messed up his shoulder, like that was it. Like he was never ever right again, and it wasn't as bad. Like he only ended up missing a couple of games because of the shoulder, at least from like 18 to 19, but it never got right, and he was never the same guy. Carr is a lot older than Cam, at least in terms of like when they injured it. So he'd be 35 at the start of the next year. That's a little young for sure at QB, and he's making big money, but if his shoulder really was like so messed up that they're like, ooh, I don't know if you're going to be able to come back for all of next year, I can totally understand that. I feel bad for Carr. I feel like for a second round pick, he had a pretty good career. He was a legitimate MVP candidate at one point for one season. He's kind of up and down, and yeah, but man, they don't like him much in New Orleans, I'm afraid.
No, they don't.
That's the funny part, man. And it's not even funny, it's sad. Because you're right, Matt. I do feel bad for Derek Carr also. Because that 2016 Raiders team was legitimately very good.
Yeah, very good.
And then they just went and stripped away all of Derek Carr's help and resources, and until the team was literally a shell of what it is, and to the team that it is currently, right, to where they had a top draft pick and one of the worst quarterback situations in football and had to do a complete culture change. So for him to go to New Orleans and be treated like complete trash when he retires, it's just
he wasn't great for them, and that's part of the business, I guess. And it doesn't really change my outlook that much on the Saints going forward. I thought that they just had a need at quarterback, regardless of whether or not they had like Carr, who is probably the 25th best quarterback when he's healthy, the 20th, somewhere in that range, right?
Yeah.
And they weren't going to be good next year anyway. And if Carr came back, like they were, either the guys I have now are going to be good, or they're probably going to draft a guy next year high if they're in position to do so, which they might be, and we'll see how that all shakes out. But it is what it is.
I understand why the Saints fans didn't like him, though. Like the communication between those two, like this offseason was so weird. And that's like this whole saga has been so weird. Like he fell against the Giants and he landed on his hand and he got a concussion. He broke his like non-throwing hand and got a concussion. And all of a sudden it's his throwing shoulder that's hurt like weeks before the draft. Between those two incidents, he's demanded a trade maybe, or that was kind of the narrative that was floated to the media, is that he could be on the move. Was he not planning on retiring then? It doesn't make any sense. That the timeline doesn't add up. Now, I do believe that human bodies are weird and football is brutal. And I believe that his shoulder did deteriorate and he did experience searing pain throwing in March that caused him to retire and not want to go through rehab. But just strange, right? Like, where did this shoulder injury come from? There was nothing about it at the end of the year. It was his non-throwing hand, and just all of a sudden there's this shoulder. So I just think there's a lot of ill will that they traded for, or they got him and they gave him a big contract and he never really amounted to much. And then it ends in kind of this weird, like almost I don't really think anyone's being shady. I just think communication has been bad, but it ends in kind of this shady way where.
And most importantly, Carr hasn't been that great for the Saints. And that's what's really been the issue, because this is not like Saints fans were like, let's go Carr this offseason, pre the injury.
Right.
It was really him playing poorly, as it always is. It's like, how like people get mad at a media answer, like someone will be in a press conference and they'll say like something that's slightly wrong. Okay, that nobody ever gets mad about that type of stuff like after a bunch of wins. It's only after the losses. When fans are getting mad, and this, I do the same thing, but when people are getting mad at like press conference answers, it's really more like the losing that no press conference answer can really solve for. I'm not saying that's a one-to-one comparison here, but I think even if like the communication has been bad, I think most importantly, the play hasn't been that good. I don't blame Carr though. I would rather go chill with my family after making all the money that he has, rather than like rehab from this shoulder injury and then try to come back on a team that stinks with a fan base that doesn't like me. I'd be like, 35.
I do think he's had a warmer. I don't even know if that's even the word, warmer reception than Deshaun Watson had when he tore his Achilles and got.
I mean, obviously, like, duh.
But even then, I still stand on the opinion that most of the people that cheered are just doing so because Watson was horrible, not because he's like a bad guy, just because he's like a bad quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, with Watson, it's a lot of things. But with Carr, I do feel bad. I do feel bad too. And I think he gets a little underrated by the fan base. The play hasn't been stellar, but I mean, what does touchdown to interception ratio really mean? We can argue it, but 40 to like 13 the last 2 years. I really think the Saints were onto something last year with the wide zone scheme and the play action off of it, and Shaheed and Olave running the kind of the deeper in breakers behind all that. Like, I really think Kellen Moore, regardless if it's Rattler or Shuck or whoever, should kind of use that as the base play, because that was working for the Saints until those wide receivers just got decimated, and so did Carr with injuries. So I think there is a blueprint there that was working at an underrated level last year before the team got absolutely ravaged. And more, his offenses have looked so many different ways over the course of his career. Like, Philly didn't look anything like Dallas. So now it's Shuck, what is he? Moore, what is he going to bring? Like, it could really be absolutely anything with Rattler and Shuck's skill set. But I think they should really look at Derek Carr's success last season and say, we should kind of go back to basics here. Like, we should look at that blueprint and kind of try to keep it going, even though he retired. So even though he retired and wasn't great for them, I still think that he kind of showed what the Saints can look like at their best in a very small sample size last season. I mean, they killed the Cowboys. I cannot get that game out of my head.
They did. Yeah, 2023, 3,800 yards, 25 touchdowns, 8 picks, 68% completion percentage. Not stellar, but
it's not that bad. Like, you'd think he's just bad. It's a shame that he never got a playoff win as well. That's the other very sad thing.
That's where he was. He wasn't great, but he was definitely a starter in the league.
He was a solid starter.
Would you rather have 34-year-old Derek Carr or Tua Tagovailoa?
Oh my God! I mean,
I'd rather have Tua.
I think I'd rather have Tua too. I think so.
I was setting you up there.
Are we going to clip along at a pace to get through 36 picks?
I'm ready. 36 picks.
Let's get into it, man.
Let's get into it. The Dynasty rookie draft. I've got my big board. I've got my strategy. I don't have the first overall pick though.
Blaiden,
I have the first overall pick, and it's the easiest first overall pick of my life, and it's going to be Ashton Jeanty. He's I kind of went about this as like a skill, like how good I think they are, which I think is the most important factor of this, and then also how much are they actually going to be featured in this offense, right? But I think the most important thing is just how good they are. Jeanty's one of the best running back prospects we've ever seen. And he's going to be used at a clip that's about as high as anyone in the NFL, probably as a rookie. So,
yep. Hard not to like his situation. Carroll likes his running backs. You know, he went about at the peak of where he could have, I guess, maybe a couple of picks higher, but a team fell in love with him and took him as though he was a transcendent running back superstar, which I'd say anybody who is going this high basically is being looked at like that. Chip Kelly likes to run a lot and is creative. And while I think like the offense as a whole could possibly take another year to round out in terms of like if we want to get into, is he going to have like the receiver threats on the outside to stop the box from getting stacked? Well, it's not an unreasonable thing to bring up, but Jeanty is just so damn good. And this is Dynasty we're talking about that, yeah, I really like him, and I think he's obviously the first overall pick.
Yeah, easiest first overall pick probably in a while. So, Matt, that brings it to you with the second overall pick.
It does. I've thought a lot about this one. It's really tough. It's obviously between Hampton and Hunter. I think I lean Hunter here, but it's really close. The thing is that I'm just not that worried that Hunter isn't going to be a receiver. It really seems like the way the Jaguars are talking, that that's how they look at him. He has, to be fair, the most capital put into any player in this draft because the Jaguars traded up so much to get him. And I just can't imagine that they're going to do that and then be like, well, he's just going to be like, our corner, like he's going to be a slot corner. It would be impossible to make up for that value, in my opinion, unless he was the very best corner in the NFL, right? To me, I'm really excited about him and his situation for a ton of reasons. First off, he's a guy who can win in multiple different ways in terms of being a total threat after the catch. So I feel like he could be used in the short game a ton, but he also has, incredible ball skills in terms of tracking and playing it. And great speed, of course, which plays into him being an awesome deep threat. On top of that, I like the fact that he's playing with Brian Thomas Jr. I like that.
Definitely.
It takes a lot of attention off of him. Not to say that he won't still see a ton, but it makes it, almost impossible to deal with both of those guys at the same time. And Trevor Lawrence is a guy who, hasn't been the most consistent before, and it's been ugly in Jacksonville, but I think totally has the talent to support multiple wide receivers. And Liam Cohen is an offensive coordinator who has the talent to support multiple wide receivers, as we obviously saw, like in his previous, like in Tampa, right? So I do think Hunter is such a special player that I would take him second overall, but it's really tough because I also really like Hampton. So that one would probably be a coin flip for me and come down to what my team needed more. But if we're going to do it in a vacuum and we're not going to cop out and say, well, they're in a tier together, I like them both, I'll take Hunter.
All right.
Do you play in IDP leagues, Matt?
No. Well, I did for a time, yeah.
You did for a time? Hunter's a cheat code there, man.
Hunter would be a cheat code. The thing about IDP is that, like, corner is just the most worthless position ever.
Until they until they're also 1,000-yard receivers, and he's
they're also a 1,000-yard receiver. So, that's true, because if you can play him at corner, like, all of a sudden, I guess I hadn't even thought about that. In IDP, you could argue he's the 101. I'm just so used to, like, I did a big auction IDP Dynasty League for a while, and it's like dudes would put down like a bunch of their money on like Jeff Okudah or whatever, and it's like, first off, even if this guy ends up being good, he could just be locked down and then no one throws to him and nothing happens. Stats.
Unless you're in the Theo Ash
somebody who gets tackles.
Weirdo league where a pick six is 10,000 points in an instant.
That was awesome. That was every team got 5 secondary players, and every tackle they had was negative points. So you didn't want a guy who got tackles, but if they it was like a golden snitch if they got a pick six. And I think Tyler Budge one time got 2 pick sixes in 1 week on his team or something, and had like by far the most points in the league the rest of the season. For those who don't know, IDP stands for individual defensive player. It's very fair to not know. You probably shouldn't know, but
it's embarrassing if you don't know.
It is, actually. You're right.
Yourself for you don't know. No, but who do you have at 3?
I'm going to go with Ted McMillan at number 3, Panthers guy. I just think with him, he is going to be such a great red zone threat, just stacking up targets in the red zone and coming down with them.
Canales brought that up.
Yeah. And I think that he's going to be way more consistent there than any of the other receivers that they have. And I'm bullish on this Panthers offense, man. I really do think that Bryce can carry on what he did in the second half of the season.
He looked really good. It wasn't BS, man. Like, it just came down to the first couple of games. This guy got pressured and was just, the worst I've ever seen a pro quarterback. No exaggeration. Truly, just like every time.
Yeah, under pressure, it was the worst ever.
It was as bad as it could be. And then he comes back, all of a sudden he's going up against the Eagles. He's weaving in and out. And it's like, I just couldn't believe it. It still shocks me to go watch the game and be like, this guy was not like that at the beginning of the year. If he can continue that, I think the Panthers' weapons, if Tet is good, like I think there's a lot to like there. I mean, I like Coker as well. Leggett could take a jump. Sanders finished well. I think the offense has some real juice. There's a chance.
Yeah, and they can pound the rock as well with Chuba Hubbard and Rico Dowdle, who's probably one of the more underrated 1-2 punches at running back to so there's not going to be a ton of pressure on Ted McMillan in terms of like double coverage seen constantly, like maybe some other top 10 wide receivers of the past. And like yeah, Bryce, I do believe in him again. Hope core Bryce Young, I do believe in him. He kind of had the running back thing at the end of the season where I believe smaller running backs have a bit of an advantage because the defenders just kind of lose them and they can sneak through smaller gaps. Like somehow Bryce was able to use that to his advantage at quarterback. Like I swear he was running under guys' legs or just like through the blocks of. There is a play against the Cowboys, I think it was on the 3rd and long where he pretty much did that. Like 2 guys were engaged with a block and he like got skinny and like squirted right between them. It's like, man, is being small like good all of a sudden? But anyway, I just like I like Ted. I like all the production that he had at Arizona. I think that he's a dominant production type of guy, like not so much a blocker.
Him, you know,
the
like
spreadsheets love him.
Like I think that's a big deal for Dynasty as much as like anything else. I mean, we want to give our own takes here, of course, but I do believe like in general, like the numbers do not lie overall in Dynasty. Maybe on individual cases, like a Bucky Irving, for instance, right? But I do think like an early breakout age, that's a big deal, right? That matters a ton. Clearly, it's undeniable. And Ted is just somebody who's got the size and got that, and he's got the draft capital, and he's going to be wide receiver 1. And I think he even fits well into the Panthers offense. Like they need someone who gets those deep balls down the sideline that Bryce was so good at throwing. He's going to be the man for that, I think. I do have to say, though, I really disagree with not having Hampton at 3.
Well, I got a snake, and I'm taking Hampton now.
Are we doing a snake?
We can.
Oh, are we? Are we not though?
Unless you want to. I was thinking we would just go back and forth, but if we want to snake it, I mean.
Oh, I was assuming snake. Otherwise, I'm getting hosed with the 3rd pick, right?
Snake, then you can snake and take Hampton.
Okay, I'll take Hampton next, even though I'm not the world's biggest Hampton believer, and Najee is there as well. Perfect scheme fit, like we said after the draft. Like in this Greg Roman offense, running all the gap scheme that they do when it's not so like there's a little bit of reading gaps and gap scheme. Like obviously you don't just have to follow your guard. You can cut back if there's over pursuit, but for the most part, you're following your guard there. And I think Hampton hits the hole at such a speed and has such good footwork in a tight space that offense is really going to work for him. He'll be a beast at the goal line. Like I can just imagine him jumping over the whole pile and coming down on the other side, like untouched, right? When they're at the 1 yard line, like that's going to be a big thing for him. And yeah, I think for a dynasty thing, he's young. I'm not really worried about tread off the tires or anything like that with him. Or really any running back. I think that's been a talking point that's gotten completely blown out of proportion the last few years. Like, oh, there's so much tread off the tires. Like, you don't want to take a worse running back over a better one because of tread off the tires. Like, there's just not a lot of statistical backing to it. There's not a lot of like actual proof in the pudding. It's just something that people say that kind of caught on, I think.
That's fair enough. I will say, I mean, you've got Harris there with the Chargers, of course. I do think that could eat into Hampton's carries early. I do think Hampton is just the more talented back than Najee, and I think he will win out. And if we're talking dynasty, I think we got to be thinking a little bit more long-term than just one guy there. And we saw last year, like Dobbins was able to really win out. I think they're going to end up leaning on the more talented runner. I think that's Hampton. I also think the Hampton could have some juice in the receiving game, and I think Harbaugh at one point brought that up. So I'm a bigger fan of him than you two guys. I think he's closer to being the 2nd pick than the 4th. But I totally agree. Like him going to a team that really loves running backs and really wants to run it has me excited. I think he's going to do great things.
I think it's kind of Nick Chubb-esque as far as like running back situations go. Like he might not be the guy like the feature back off rip, but by the end of the season, it'll be clear he's the future behind to be behind Justin Herbert.
That brings it to me with the 5th overall pick. We are doing super flex. We did not bring that up. And I think if we're talking quarterbacks matter, this is right where I think Cam Ward would go. Obviously, we don't think Ward is the craziest first overall pick quarterback ever because he wasn't the 101 like I feel like you would often see in mock drafts like this. But I do think he's very good, and I think he has a very good shot at being a long-term plus quarterback in the NFL. He was the only guy that we had as like a first-round grade. I think he's got, great pocket presence and the ability to be a serious creator. Maybe needs to rein it in a little bit at times. Maybe needs to run through the finish line on some of his out-of-bounds runs, but I think the talent is absolutely there. I have some real questions about the Titans supporting cast for him in year one. I think there is a very decent shot that it could be a little ugly. I mean, it's Calvin Ridley and, a whole bunch of mess after that. And I know that Ward thinks that Ridley is like a top 5, top 1 wide receiver in the NFL, but I'm not quite as high on him. They did
Burks is top 5. Burks is top 5.
Burks is also top. So he does have multiple top 5 wide receivers, so he should be all good. They invested in the offensive line, though. Not the highest on it, but I think it could be like better than a disaster for sure. And they've been investing in the offensive line for a while. So we'll see. But if you're in a super flex, like quarterbacks matter a lot. I like Ward a good amount. And I think here at 5 is when it starts to make sense, unless you're like a certain type of team who needs a certain type of dude.
Yeah, I mean, Cam Ward's going to start day one. The run game I wouldn't expect to be super prominent. Even if you're not in love with the receivers, they're going to throw
it's Dynasty.
Yeah.
They're probably going to invest in receiver at some point here. Like, let's say year one goes bad. My expectation would be the first thing that they do is they want to be the team that goes and invest in a big receiver. So, yeah.
Yeah, they've done a nice job, I thought, this offseason, like getting it as good as possible. Like, there's nothing crazy that they could have done.
Offseason, yeah.
Like they got Kevin Zeitler to sign with them somehow, even though he could have ring chased, but he plays for the Titans.
He did ring chase. What are you talking?
Yeah, maybe. They got Dan Moore, which is not like a good signing, but you just got to know what Cam Ward is. And therefore, completing the 5 spots on the offensive line might be worth it when you've got oodles of money with Ward on a rookie contract. So, like, I think there's enough there that we can see what Ward is like. This isn't an all-time bad situation that he's stepping into, in my opinion. It's not great, but it's not too different than like what Herbert stepped into or Burrow when they were rookies. Like it's not.
It's far from unseen. I didn't want to make it sound like some sort of particularly horrifying situation for a first overall pick. It's just not like super strong. I'd be surprised if it had like an awesome fantasy finish year one, of course.
Yeah.
So that brings me to back-to-back picks here, 6 and 7. And with 6, I'm going to take Matthew Golden, another receiver that I think is going to be prominently featured in an offense. Theo, I do think he is probably the Packers' best receiver off rip. And I think that's gonna show. I think he's the most complete guy. I think he'll add a lot of range to Jordan Love. Just a guy that's reliable, has good hands, can just do a lot more, can do a little bit of everything in ways that I feel like a lot of the other receivers kind of can't. So.
He brings something to the table. I mean, you talked earlier, Theo, about like the intermediate stuff and how Love needs that, and it wasn't there because they were missing a guy. If Golden provides that, he's going to be on the field a lot. I think this is probably a little bit higher than I would take Golden personally, but I like him because I think his upside could be pretty crazy. I think there's absolutely a world where he is the wide receiver 1 from day one. There's a lot of dudes there. There's a lot of names in Green Bay, but nobody where you're like, how is he going to beat out this guy? How is he going to beat out this guy? I mean, Packers drafted him with higher capital than they've drafted a receiver with since 2002. You know, they clearly have a big plan for this guy, and I'm still high on what the Packers offense could be. We were last year. We got burned atrociously, but it was largely because the receivers were rough. So I don't hate Golden as kind of a pick here.
Yeah, there are a lot of names there, but yeah, like you said, Matt, no one that I'm like, oh, I don't.
There's some good players. I don't want to make it out like they have no other receivers. Like, ideally, if Golden comes in and is a true one, and he was looking like a true one at the end of last season, then all of a sudden, like, the pressure is off everybody else a little bit, and it totally recalibrates what you think.
Even if he's the two, I would like him kind of for the same reason that I would like Travis Hunter in Jacksonville, right? You don't need him to just be like the only guy getting targets, but two guys can get 100 targets in a season, and you feel pretty good about that.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. He's in a good offense too. Like, as disappointing as Green Bay's offense was last year for us, you look at the metrics and you're like, whoa, this is not as bad as I remember. They were 11th in yards per drive. They were top 10 in points per drive. They were top 10 in EPA. They were top 10 in success rate. They were one of the best DVOA teams. Like, they actually put some numbers on the board last year, albeit with a really high run rate, with Love definitely kind of taking more of a backseat than I'd hoped. But Golden is going to be the best player at so many things for them. I mean, with Watson out, all of a sudden he's the only guy who can really take the top off. Well, I guess Reed can too. I always forget about Reed after the way he closed last year. But I still think that Golden just is their best in a lot of different skill sets. Like, so yeah, he shouldn't really have any problem making an impact early, even though the number 22 that he chose kind of makes it seem like he's just a gadget guy. We'll see though. But Blaiden, who's your pick after Golden?
It's kind of a coin toss right now for me between two tight ends, Colston Loveland in Chicago and Tyler Warren in Indianapolis. I do think Tyler Warren is going to get a lot of usage just because I feel like the routes that Anthony Richardson is really good at throwing, that seam ball is something that Warren is going to be, very accessible for. And obviously the screen game and stuff after the catch. But I love Colston Loveland and his skill set. My main concern with him is there are so many damn mouths to feed in Chicago. So like if there's anyone who like could get left out, I feel like the two rookies are probably the top guys. So I will take Tyler Warren here with pick 7, even though that might be a little early for a tight end, but I think he's going to get a lot of usage kind of right away.
Yeah, I'll be completely honest with you, man. I don't agree with this pick at all.
Really?
No, I think Warren is not a first round pick, probably, for a number of reasons. I'll say this. First off, yes, Loveland is in an offense that has a lot of weapons, but he's with a guy who has produced great numbers for a rookie tight end before in Sam Laporta. Yeah. And he was also drafted with the 10th overall pick. Yeah, he's young, but I have just as much concern for like the guys who weren't brought in by Ben Johnson as I do the young guys who were but aren't as established. Loveland is also, I think, a better receiving threat than Warren, just straight up. He's got the ability to get in and out of his breaks in a way that Warren just doesn't quite. And I like Warren a lot. I think I ended with Warren as tight end 1, even though, like, I had Loveland close, but that was because of a lot of blocking. On top of that, Warren is in like a really terrible offense. I mean, the Colts are one of the offenses that throws the very least, and they have a lot of mouths to feed. I had Josh Downs in our 32-team league last year, and Josh Downs is a demon, right? But there are games, I can tell you, where the Colts are completing single-digit passes, and they're not throwing the ball at all. Now, Warren might have the benefit of getting a little bit more schemed up for him, but you need him to get a ton of short little looks for it to work out. And really, like, do I feel more confident in the Colts scheming up a bunch of him and giving him a bunch of usage over Loveland, where I've seen Ben Johnson kind of maybe do it very recently. I don't know. I think I like Loveland. Even then, I probably wouldn't take. I have a couple other guys I would take before the tight ends, but Warren probably wouldn't be my pick at 7.
That's fair. That's fair. I'm curious though. You have the 8th pick here. Would you take Travion Henderson?
Yeah, I would take Travion Henderson with the 8th pick. Now it's close. Yeah. I'll say again. Yeah. There's another Buckeye who I would seriously consider, and if I could get Egbuka at 8, I really would think about doing that as well. But Henderson, I think, is just in a particularly good position because I like where the Patriots are headed. And more importantly, I think he's built to be a great fantasy player. He's somebody who can get himself on the field very easily because he can receive and block and run. That receiving threat means that if we're taking into account PPR, which I feel like I always play PPR, so I am, he could really start to rack up fantasy numbers where a guy who maybe gets a bunch more touches couldn't. And on top of that, like, do I have questions about him as a bell cow back? Like, yeah, I do. But is he somebody who has a chance to get a lot of catches and break off explosive runs when he does touch the ball? Absolutely. And I think on some level, you'll take guys who can have those huge finishes because they can just get a couple of big time plays when you're talking about fantasy. So I argued against Henderson because I had Hampton over him and you guys had Henderson over Hampton. But if we're talking just in a vacuum, like, Henderson's a very likable player. He's got a lot of good traits. I think he went to a good spot with a lot of capital. So I would take him here at 8.
Yeah, I think that is. I probably would have had him, after Loveland and Warren as well. Yeah, I think he'll be a good resource in New England.
Yeah, I'm taking Loveland. Thank God. I mean, the Bears receiving core is not that proven. I mean, DJ Moore is on thin ice, man, after last year.
Absolutely. Yeah.
DJ Moore,
just no question.
Caleb might look at Loveland more to get revenge on DJ Moore.
Yeah, I mean, DJ Moore was like doing like weirdo stuff for a paid player. You know what I mean? I think, and I like DJ Moore. I love DJ Moore. It's so weird because it was so bad with the Panthers for so long, and I liked him specifically because he was the opposite way, where like it was never an issue when it easily could have been, and he could have asked out, and he wanted to stay in Carolina. So I don't know, but yeah, I like Loveland's prospects. I really do.
Yeah, so I'm taking Loveland. Just think that he could be a beast. And tight end, I think there's a big drop off between him and the rest when it comes to receiving production in the first 3 years of their career. And then right after Loveland, I'm tempted to take Luther Burden just because there's so much kind of up for grabs in this Bears offense. And I think their pass rate is going to be so high next year. Like I think about Egbuka and I think about Burden. I like Egbuka more, but man, like the Bears have Caleb Williams and they took no running back, and maybe that smash mouth style of football that Detroit was playing last year was the vision of Dan Campbell, and Ben Johnson wants to do something different because the way the team is built right now, it just feels like they're going to be throwing the ball all over the yard. Whereas in Tampa Bay, I wonder with Bucky Irving there and the offensive line they've got, if it's going to be kind of scaled back. And Egbuka, he's got to wait his turn behind Mike Evans, and he's got to wait his turn behind Chris Godwin, I think. And whereas in Chicago, it's like, man, if Burden's good, the floodgates are open for him to just make an impact right away. So I'm going to take Burden.
I don't know.
I'm going to take Burden.
I like Burden, but I just don't think he's the caliber of player that Egbuka is, in my opinion. And I think Egbuka is going to see the field early and often, and I think the guys ahead of him are old. And I mean, if I'm going to have the 11th pick here, I'll take Egbuka for the same reason that the Bucs took Egbuka, is how I'm thinking about it. Just too good of a player to pass up. I'm not worried about the receivers on the Buccaneers, just like the Buccaneers weren't worried about the other receivers on the Buccaneers. They said, Mecca Egbuka, he's a demon. We need him. I need him. Again, we've said it a million times, but he's just ultra reliable. I think he's incredibly well-rounded. He's coming from the number one position group, I think, in the country in terms of just producing consistent fantasy players. outside of maybe LSU's receivers, respect due, and they produce, guys who I think are going like crazy, right? But Egbuka is good off the line. He's good through contact. He breaks well. He is good after the catch. He's got reliable hands. And I think he can easily play inside out. I can understand liking the Bears offense maybe more than Tampa's, but I think Burden is fighting a big battle to get through all of those guys. I don't think he's as surefire as an outside guy as Romeo and DJ. I agree DJ is on thin ice, but he's certainly going to, at the start of the year, be starting ahead of Burden. And if it's not in the slot and maybe Loveland is there some, then it could be times where, he's not working himself on the field early, Now that doesn't mean that I'm super duper low on him or anything. Like, I like Burden a good amount, and I agree we should be betting on talent, and I agree the Bears wide receivers are clearly not that set if they went back-to-back weapons.
Yeah.
I mean, that alone tells you something there. But I'm not going to ignore the fact that they've got multiple guys who I think are going to be competing, and the fact that I'm just higher on Emeka Egbuka. I just think he's a better prospect. So at 11, I'm taking him.
Yeah, I also would have taken Egbuka over Burden, but that's just me. And
it's your pick, Blaiden. I think you've got a good chance to do something you probably want to do. Who's your pick?
To do something that I want to do?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I know that I've got a couple Browns players in range here. And the first one I'm going to take is Keyshawn Judkins. I do think at some point it's going to take a little bit longer, but I do think he will end up being the starting back over Jerome Ford. I think he's a guy that Stefanski's going to like more as a power runner. I think that's kind of the main thing that's been lacking from this Browns offense with Chubb being out, is the lack of being able to push a pile. That's something that, like, Ford's got the speed. He can burn angles pretty well. He's got some good moves in space. But Judkins is just a more physical runner. And I think eventually Stefanski's going to be like, that's just our guy, man. So I could at some point see him, at the very least, getting a lot of touchdowns, like red zone work. I could very easily see him being a prominent feature there. So I like Judkins here at, what is it, pick 12? Yeah.
I wasn't the absolute highest on Judkins pre-draft.
Neither was I.
But it wasn't like I was ridiculously low, and I think the draft capital here is undeniable. Frankly, I would be very shocked if they spent the pick that they did on Judkins not to start Quinshon early. Like, it would just shock me. And of course, like, I love Jerome Ford. I don't think he's been the most consistent back. I don't know if his numbers are still as bad as they were in terms of like spending time behind the line of scrimmage, but if they went multiple running backs, I know they said they didn't plan to go Samson, so like, take that.
They also didn't plan to go multiple quarterbacks,
Right. So it's like, take that for what you will. Maybe it doesn't speak to what they think of Ford, but certainly not a good thing if they're taking multiple guys. And it's certainly not a good thing if they're taking Judkins at 36. I also completely agree. He, to me, seems like the short yardage guy. I think he's going to be the early guy, like who's going to get a bunch of touches. And I think he'll be the number one, honestly, from game one is my expectation.
Really?
And that includes, in the red zone, like short yardage, like, yeah, I feel like it'll be him over. I mean, they have 5 quarterbacks. Will any of them be taking like a bunch of power? I don't think so. Right. My concern is that the Browns suck. I think their offense it's not very good.
They're not going to ever be in the red zone.
Yeah.
Yes,
that is
they're not going to be scoring it in the red zone. That's exactly it. Their offensive line is shaky. Their quarterback play is a complete mystery. Who the hell knows? They're going to have another, was it 2016 where they started like 7 guys? It's going to be like that again where they start 5 guys this year probably. And what concerns me more is, like, even in Dynasty, how long is it going to take the Browns to get good? Like, they're really dug in a hole in terms of their salary position. Maybe that's an overreaction. They've got 2 first-round draft picks next year. Maybe you don't want to think that far ahead, but
we'll get 2 offensive linemen. Let's go, bro.
You'll go, yeah, maybe you'll double up and run it with him 400 times. But I think at 12, he's great value. So, yeah, I don't dislike your pick.
Yeah. And then my next pick, I assume you think I'm going to go Harold Fannin Jr. here.
No,
please,
I don't
please
think
don't.
Harold Fannin Jr.
I was not going to go Harold Fannin Jr. I was going to go Kyle Williams in New England, a guy who I don't know how much value he's actually going to get or how much usage he's going to get right away with Diggs and Douglas being there. But it's just a guy where I feel confident that he's going to be able to find work. Like, eventually, it's just going to be like, man, he's a little too fast to not have on the field in an offense that severely lacked, like, threatening speed last year.
They didn't have any sort of deep threat. I'll say this. I thought my I don't know if I would have taken Williams over maybe a couple of the running backs who were still on the board, but I agree with, like, Kyle Williams is the guy that people are too low on, I think. Absolutely. First off, I think
people
a situation
low on Kyle Williams right now? I thought people loved him.
I mean, fantasy-wise, he's not, like, ranked above Caleb Johnson.
What's his average Dynasty ranked right now?
Let me check, actually.
Maybe it's not that
on Football Guys, he's wide receiver 9.
That's a little low for me.
Yeah,
I think that Williams.
Too.
I think Williams is in a particularly good spot. I like what the Patriots are doing in terms of their coaching, their draft. Like Drake May, I think the outlook overall, they invested a ton in the offense, is really strong. Stephon Diggs is there, but he's old and coming off of an ACL injury. And even if, let's say Stephon Diggs is good next year, I don't even know if I really care. Like, it's not a bad thing because I think Kyle Williams is going to be wide receiver 2 there, and I think he can play outside. This guy is a deep threat who not only is super fast, which there's plenty of, but he's a deep threat who's good at being a deep threat. He can get off the line. He does a good job doing the little things to sell his route. He can track the ball. Like, I'm a huge, huge fan of him. I think his on-the-field speed is very apparent. I don't know what his 40 time was, but he's one of those guys where you watch him and you're like, great, you know what you're getting, and the 40 time is either going to be fast or lie. So and the reality is like, dude, the Patriots wide receivers outside of him are either like slot dudes or stink. I mean, it's a bad group.
Respect Kayshon Boutte, brother.
No.
Right.
He's
so
Pop Douglas deserves a little bit more shout, perhaps. But yeah, Kyle Williams is stepping into a great situation. I'm pretty high on what the Patriots are building. I think Josh McDaniels is returning as the coordinator there. Head coach wouldn't want him. Coordinator, I'm fine with it. And Drake May could go nuclear. Like, I really still believe in his potential. So I don't hate this swinging on Kyle Williams. I don't. But Matt, who's your pick?
I think I'm at a point where I respect RJ Harvey and the situation that he's walked them into, the amount of draft capital that he's seen, and the way that Sean Payton has talked about him some. Payton likes to throw to his running backs a ton. I think Harvey could be the next guy who is a huge receiving threat. I know you compared him to McKinnon, no?
Jerick McKinnon is too harsh, but he is like that kind of build and that kind of like stoutness. I don't know, but he's
a lighter guy. He's not huge.
He's short and he's stout, and he's got, I think, good speed, but not great speed. And I think he bounces a lot outside, but I also think, and he spends a lot of time behind the line of scrimmage, but I also think he's got really naturally strong contact balance because of how like compact he is. And he seems to have soft hands, even though he didn't really show much in the receiving game at UCF, but that's something that Sean Payton, I think, is banking on. I think he saw him run routes in the pre-draft process, and I think he's got it in his head that RJ Harvey is a much better receiver than he showed. So I think that RJ Harvey has some like PPR upside in that way. While also having a lot of talent as a runner, like to bounce it as much as he did in college. It takes a lot of talent to have that kind of lateral agility to make a cut, outrun the force player kind of as you're moving horizontally and then turn it upfield. So he's got a lot of juice, but he does spend a lot of time behind the line of scrimmage. And I think, does he have enough juice if he continues to play that way? in the NFL. He's got to change some things. I think you don't hear running backs get called projects very much, I feel like. I do think that RJ Harvey will have a bit of a learning curve with the receiving workload going up, with kind of his style of play perhaps needing to change a little bit, the blocking aspect as well. So there's a lot that I'm like, I don't know if I'm all in on him right away as much as some people are going to be fantasy wise. I think but he was so productive, hit so many home runs last year. Like, he does have speed. It may not be like Saquon Barkley or anything, but he does kind of have those runs where he presses backside and then bounces it back front side like Saquon kind of does. And I think you need a very good amount of juice to do that. His lateral quick cuts, not only to escape the force player and bounce it, but meeting somebody in the hole and making them miss in a phone booth. He's got that as well. So there's a lot of pros, but also a lot of cons with RJ Harvey. But I get banking on Sean Payton and his.
I mean, just the way that
and a line that
running backs in the past, and the way the Broncos offense operates now, I think Harvey has the adequate juice. I've been watching him a little bit more since the draft. And I just think his situation, I mean, if he could be on the field a lot, I think the Broncos running back room really is not very strong. It shouldn't be hard to beat out. And again, the draft capital, I think, speaks for itself. Picking him 60th overall is a huge investment for a running back. So I would take him here.
Yeah, Audric Estime beating him out, I fear.
I hope so, man. I love Audric Estime, but he did. I can't get that hurdle fumble that he did out of his hands, out of my head, and Sean Payton chewing him out.
I don't think
they picked Harvey for a reason.
Either. I mean, how many snaps did Estime play at the end of the year? Because the Broncos got down to it at running back last year, and he didn't even crack, I think, 100 touches.
I'm not completely out on him, but he shouldn't necessarily dissuade you from drafting Harvey and thinking. But I also think Sean Payton, he always likes to split it. Alvin Kamara has never had an 1,000-yard rushing season, if you can believe it. He, as much as Payton likes the running back and gets him involved in the receiving game, he also might be frustratingly by committee. But at this point in the draft, I do
that's
like.
Fine. Look, if Harvey is the Kamara of the committee, that is fine by me.
Fair.
He might not get a lot of rushing yards, but he got a lot of good fantasy finishes.
Yeah, that's fair.
Real.
I'm up next. I'm going to take Caleb Johnson out of in Pittsburgh. I don't love Caleb Johnson as a player, to be honest with you. I think his shiftiness isn't great. I think he really needs the picture to be clean. I think a lot of his big runs, the track he was able to run on, was really clear. But I like the Pittsburgh offensive line and what they've invested in there. And if they can get some players back healthy, like Fautanu next season, I really think it can be a good group, like McCormick, Frazier. It's not a bad unit at all. Suomala, who's the left guard they got from Suomala. I think that they can open up big holes in the zone running schemes, and Darnell Washington, their tight ends as well, really, really good blockers. So I think that the lanes for Johnson are going to be there, and it's a scheme that he's really, really comfortable with. Him and Arthur Smith, they're just a really good mesh with the type of runs that they like. So I'm going with Caleb Johnson here. And then with my next pick on the swing, I do want in on Jack Besh from TCU in this Raiders offense. I'm kind of watching Savion Williams. Obviously, Savion, the Packer, has all the potential in the world. He's got the size and the cutting ability, right? The start stop. Is he Brian Thomas Jr., just waiting to break out? Maybe not. Probably not. Definitely not. But Jack Besh is somebody who is a lot more complete right now. He is almost better after the catch, as ridiculous as Savion Williams can be. Besh just has that sense for space. He catches the ball and just kind of ducks and makes himself small, and the guy overshoots him, and then he pops back up and keeps running. He's just got magnets in his gloves for the ball. I think his hands and his ability to track are really good. I think he's going to be just a good dirty work type of guy, reliable, feisty. There's a lot of opportunity here for a wide receiver to prove themselves outside of Bowers. We know Jacoby Myers is going to get 800 yards, but I just think Besh is going to prove to be kind of invaluable and a really solid player. So I'm kind of in on him.
I don't hate that pick. Besh is interesting. I mean, there's obviously if you can do the work you need to do, there's room to be had for you in Vegas, right? I mean, they're thin at receiver. I am interested to see how they plan to play him because he's kind of a bigger guy that you'd maybe think is like a big slot at the next level, but he's not. I mean, like he's not going to find a ton of time doing that if Bowers is over there. So I know he's got some versatility. Maybe he ends up outside a lot, and I think that Vegas invested enough where I'd be pretty shocked if they were just like, yeah, he's actually not going to see the field that much and we don't know what we were thinking, right? And it's certainly like Bowers is just too damn good for them to like be, not putting him on the field all the time. It's like it can't be, the
I mean, who are the other receivers here?
Like, of course, like,
and so Kelly's going to play 11 personnel. Like that's who he is now. He's not the same guy he was before in Philly. Like it's a lot more pro style now. Like I think it's going to work. I think he's going to be competent. And yeah, they invested a high second round pick on Besh, right? So I like him. I want to board. I want to board the Besh train.
It's fair.
That brings it to my pick. We're on pick 17.
Yes.
Which we maybe haven't said in a second. This is a tough one for me because this is between, I think, either a couple of other receivers that I have in that Besh tier, or this starts to be the time where Jackson Dart makes sense. I'm probably going to go with Trey Harris here. You know what? I'm going to go with Jackson Dart because if I don't,
there you go.
Anybody else will. I'm not the highest on Jackson Dart. We've talked about this ad nauseum, and this is another take where I feel like the fans of Giants
tired
fans
of us
are probably sick of hearing it, which is fair, right?
Yeah.
Dart does have rushing ability, and he loves to run. That is undeniably good for fantasy. I think that if he gets in the game, I think Dayball can make things easy for him. And I think if that's the case and he does a good job picking his spots and he maybe is a little bit more coordinated as a rushing threat than Daniel Jones was, I think he could have some good fantasy finishes, even if we aren't like the highest on him as an overall quarterback. I mean, at one point, Daniel Jones was a legit starting QB and just regular old fantasy. Not a high one, but I think he had a top 12 finish in his really good year. And there is some truth of like, I don't want to talk about Dart like it's for certain, even though I'm really not that high on him. I mean, you can get things like this wrong all the time. And I think he's in not that bad of a situation. I mean, he's got Neighbors down there as a deep threat, and I like Dayball still. I do have some concerns about how long is Wilson going to start? And then if Wilson starts and then Dart comes in, does maybe he only get a year and a half before they're ready to move on? And maybe if things don't go well, I
think we're going to see Dart this season. I don't think Wilson's going to hold on to it for that long.
I don't think Wilson's going to hold on it for that long, but I think I don't think it's impossible that the Giants' current office and their current coaching staff, which is what I would need to feel comfortable at having Dart on the team. It's if you change up the coaching staff, they probably want a new quarterback, right? That's kind of my thought.
Yeah.
So, and I think if the leash is probably a little bit shorter on them because they've already been through an iteration of QB, even though I don't really blame Dayball. I don't want to make it out like I do. I don't know. I guess maybe that's not a fair concern. He's a first round pick, and I think he's got some aspects of his game that make him decent for fantasy. I think the Giants could actually, their defensive line's good. Maybe they wreak a lot of havoc and put the Giants in good situations offensively, and he throws to Neighbors and he hits the easy button stuff and then builds on his game a little bit more from there. So I think if you're playing super flex, this is around the time where I would start to think about Dart, although there might be a couple of receivers, totally depends on teams. There might be a couple of receivers that I have still above him because I'm not as high on him.
Yeah, I'm Dart was very, very low on my draft board here. So I'm glad you took him because you're right. If you didn't, Theo, would you have ever?
I don't know. I could maybe talk myself into it. I mean, he is gonna run a lot, and that does matter. And Neighbors, like, yeah, I could maybe take him, but I don't know if I would have.
Yeah, and I definitely wouldn't have taken him over Trey Harris, who I will take here at pick 8.
That would have been my pick. I think that's a good pick.
Yeah, I mean, you need a complement to what you've got already with Ladd McConkey. So I think it's as simple as, like, you look at what it's almost like they're trying to rebuild like a younger, better version of what Herbert had when he first entered the league. Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, but now he's got Ladd McConkey and Trey Harris, who are just younger, better athletes. And in that same kind of mold, though, you've got one guy that can kind of good route runner, create for you in space, not even necessarily in space, but just give you kind of intermediate looks. And then you've got one guy who's just this 6'3", who at first I didn't even realize he was that big, and then I was like, oh my gosh, he's a giant. Yeah, so I think it'll be really nice having Harris and McConkey kind of in the same receiving room. I think they'll complement each other really well. And then with my next pick, do I get crazy again? Are you guys gonna get mad at me?
Do it. Get crazy.
Get crazy. I'm gonna take Devin Neal in New Orleans, and this is like a lot of upside potential here. But you talk about Kamara never being like the only guy in a building. I think Devin Neal, there's some other guys there that he's gonna have to beat out. I think he's got the talent to beat those guys out. He's a very just nuanced, smooth runner. I know earlier I was telling you, like, oh, if anyone's gonna be this year's Bucky, it'll be Devin Neal. He probably won't be quite as good as Bucky Irving, but I think the knock that people are concerned about is athleticism. It's just not that big of a concern to me when he clearly just has the skill set of a really good running back. He's just a very complete, dynamic runner.
So. Yeah, I think he's got some things to him, but I do think that he's very slow, and I do think that
he's slow, but like
he can be good. Like Michael Carter is a guy who played for the Jets, and I think is currently on the Cardinals. Like, he had beautiful footwork and like the vision and like setting up blocks and like all of that. Like blocking, he'd give it all, but he was like small and slow. So did he ever like put up big fantasy numbers? No. And that's kind of what I worry about with Devin Neal, where it's like, I love the footwork. I love the problem solving. Like, I love all the things that he's able to do. He's able to catch it out of the backfield and just wait and wait and kind of hold back. And everybody flows out in front of him, all of his blockers, and he weaves his way. Like, he's such an instinctive, like, smart player, but sometimes that's not enough.
But here's the thing, like, we're not saying that he has to be the GOAT. But in practice, those instinctive, smart players are gonna stand out.
Or is it the player with the first step that stands out in practice? Like, or it's like he's hitting the hole.
First guy in, last guy out. He's gonna be a dog in the film room, and eventually, like, let's give that Devin Neal kid a shot, and he's gonna make 3 guys miss and pick up 7.
There's Bashal Tootin on the board, and he runs a 4.3 at however many pounds. That might stand out a little bit more.
There's another 4.3 guy that's on my board at some point, but it's not him.
All right. Well, it's your pick, Matt.
I'm going to take Jaden Higgins, who was the 34th overall pick and not a 6th round RB.
Good call.
Higgins, look, I'm not as high on him, and there is some potential here for it's like I just think he's kind of funky. I think the way that he attacks contested catches is just like sort of weird, and maybe he doesn't have like the fullest route tree ever, I guess would be.
Definitely not.
Yeah. But I mean, I think he's also going to be receiver too on an offense that has a very good quarterback. And I think, if he was doing well contested catch at the college level, I think there's a good chance that it could translate, even though I don't love how it looks on tape. And sure, maybe he doesn't have a full route tree, but I mean, does Trey Harris? Like there was a lot of times it didn't seem like that, and I think that Trey Harris is a good pick where he is.
Right.
So Higgins is like maybe not my guy, but there's aspects of his game that clearly worked enough to get the Texans to draft him, and a lot of people liked him, and it's hard to deny some of the results that he had in college. So I definitely agree with him being lower on the receiver list, and maybe we're taking a guy like Kyle Williams over him, or Harris over him, or even or Besh over him. But I do think, like, if you were to get Higgins here, I think it'd be very good value, and I think there's definitely a role for him to be good in a good offense. Although I am worried about the Texans' offensive line still. If you've got that can be fixed. Getting on an offense with a good quarterback, that's a lot harder, and he's got the hard part done. So I'll be interested to see how he does.
I'm gonna oppose you directly here, Matt, and take Jalen Noel right after him, who I like a little bit more. Fair. I think Noel has such an electric, like, quickness off the ball that he's a bit more of explosive threat. And if you're looking for someone to complement Nico Collins, I think that Noel actually has a little bit more appeal because it's just easier to get him the ball. Like, screens, he can take him the distance. Like, end arounds, he can take him the distance. He can really, truly, like, take the top off the defense and open up space for everybody else. Like, he's such a unique mover and unique route runner. I just think his hands are not as good as Higgins is, but I think he's a better separator. So I'm going to bank on Noel to be the wide receiver 2 there right after you take Higgins, and we'll see how that ends up. And then on the swing, I guess it's probably about time to take Cam Scatabo in New York. He's like, there's just not that crazy of a path to playing time for him. And he just broke so many tackles, and you watch the game versus Texas and everybody's looking silly. And that's a really good defense, and all their players got drafted, and he still left all of them in his wake. So could he be like, I don't even know how much I believe this in my soul, but he's got so much dog in him. He's got some receiving upside. It's not like, I do like Tootin too in Jacksonville with Cohen there now, but like ETN is still there, and even what's his name with the funny name, Tank Bigsby. Like he was one of the leaders in yards per carry last year. So it's a little bit harder for me to see like Tootin's path. And if I was ASU, would I trade Scatabo for Tootin? Like, I wouldn't. Like, Scatabo carried us. Like, Tootin didn't carry Virginia Tech to the playoffs and almost beat Texas. Like, if I wouldn't trade for him in college, like, is he really going to be the better NFL player, even though he's faster and all these things? So I'll take Scatabo here. Forks up.
It's not this simple, but like there definitely would be a level of like if you take Tootin over Scatabo and then like Scatabo ends up being better, you'd be like, duh.
Duh, right.
That's not even a guarantee. I'm not even saying like.
That's the thing. It's like I don't know if I was ASU if I would trade Scatabo for any running back though. Like, how far does this go? Would I rather have Scatabo or RJ Harvey? I think I don't know. I would probably, yeah. Like, would I rather have Scatabo or Caleb Johnson? Like Scatabo or Ashton Genty? He looked like Ashton Genty.
Their capital was comparable, and their path to touches, which is what we care about, is probably the same. I'm a little disappointed that there were a couple of teams where I feel like Scatabo could have really competed to be like the guy really early, who could have taken him on day 3. Like, I would have been excited if he had gone to the Bears or the Cowboys or like any of those teams I complained about not getting like one of my guys in terms of running backs. But I'll say this. If you want a committee guy, you want him to get either the goal line work or the catches. Scatabo might get both. Those are kind of his strong suits. I do think Tyrone Trace is a very good running back. I don't think he's going to be the guy, but there's a world where it's like maybe Scatabo becomes like the good parts of the committee, and he ends up having like a really great finish on maybe like kind of a lower amount of snaps. So I would have taken him there. And then after him, I'm having a hard time. I think there's a lot of places that you could go. I might go Harold Fannin Jr. here.
No, that's my next pick. No.
And here's why. I think that
It's
the
loudest anyone's been on Stay Hot. I appreciate that.
No, that's because the listeners haven't heard Matt when he first joined the call, and it's
yeah, fair.
If I'm on my camera mic, it's impossibly loud. I've never heard it myself because I don't have my headphones on when I'm doing it or whatever, and it doesn't come through my phone. But I do have an evil microphone I could turn on and ruin the audio.
You could.
It's tough. I think you could take Shuck here. I think you could take Mason Taylor, or like you could be like the other tight ends are good. And the thing is that like I also wasn't like crazy high on Fannin, but I will admit this: he's got some stuff in fantasy in terms of like he's on a bad offense, but I think the Njoku maybe is gone after next year's smoke is real. His breakout age is also very real, and I can't deny that matters if I'm being honest. That was like the number one.
He's still one of the youngest players in the draft, and he had 1,500 yards last year. So what did he have? He must have been like 19
good.
going
good
crazy.
The year before that,
yeah.
It's like, so I think that's true. And to me, we're at a point where I kind of want to. I feel like it's not quite the third round yet. We're on pick 23, but we're sort of in dart throw territory, right?
Yeah.
Who's the coolest dart throw?
It's
probably Fannin. Maybe he struggles to see the field, or maybe
he's Anquan Boldin.
Wants to get him the rock a ton. Maybe he's still a demon after the catch. I think he will be, to be clear. I think the after the catch stuff is totally legit. And maybe, the micro adjustments and the feel for space is enough to make him a really special receiving threat. I like some of the other tight ends in terms of what they could be as receivers. I understand you could go a quarterback here. I understand you could like maybe a couple of the other running backs as well. I know we're high on people's boards, but to me, we're at the tier where I'm throwing darts, and I will concede that Fannin. I will say if it had gotten down to me taking Warren, I don't think he would have even gone in the first. This would have been like me having Warren and Fannin in the same round, which would have been blasphemy considering our debate before the draft. But yeah, I think he's just an interesting play. It's undeniable, even if I have questions about the blocking or maybe how he'll always be on the field.
Dude, Kevin Stefanski loves to run multiple tight end sets so much. He loves them so much. The Browns used to run like swing routes, just like routes into the flat with Harrison Bryant. And now they're going to have a guy who's like a demon after the catch running those routes. Yeah,
he got drafted pretty high, man. His draft capital was pretty serious, dude. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, there's some other tight ends. I mean, what is it? Yeah, it's Taylor, Aurora, Ferguson. Like, there's other second-round tight ends, but they didn't have so much of a capital advantage on him that I wouldn't feel comfortable at this point saying, like, screw it.
Yeah, man. I'm really mad you took my pick because that was going to be I'm like, dude, we're in dart throw territory now. I can start to do whatever I want, which I kind of already did that with the Devin Neal pick. But I'm going to make another kind of dart throw pick, and I'm going to take Jalen Milroe here. Mostly it's the rushing upside, and eventually, like, Geno Smith isn't going to play forever. Like,
Sam Darnold is there now, though, so.
Tough. Oh yeah, dude, I've got those guys mixed up. Yeah, no, but still, it's like Sam Darnold's like, is he gonna be like the GOAT? Like they would like he's not gonna.
They took
Milroe decently high. That's what like they took.
Yeah.
It's not like they took him in like the 6th round, you know. So I do think there is like some legit juice there, and honestly, you could see some work for him this year. Maybe it's just like some power goal line sets, you know, you could just do some power option stuff down at the goal line with.
He's gonna get carries.
Make him fantasy relevant though. That I really.
He doesn't have to be relevant this year.
Well, if we're talking about he might get some work this year, I don't know if he's ever gonna. He would have to be like a really super. I don't think that's his path to fantasy relevance.
It is a bonus that I think he's going to get carries and score rushing touchdowns this year.
I just think he's also going.
You're not going to start him for that. Even
no, but Yeah, but it's like if you have a guy on a bye, it's like, well, I guess I'll put Milrow in. Maybe he'll get some points for me this year. But the idea is that hopefully he like earns a starting job. Like,
in the 32 team league, he will be very relevant. That I will give you. I'll say this, probably a little bit earlier than I would draft Milrow.
Yeah.
But there's a very good argument to be had in the sense that, like, okay, Tyler Shuck is the other quarterback that we should be really thinking about here, unless you're very high on Shedeur Sanders. Shuck's advantage is that, like, he's gonna start. They're not playing him this year now, right? I mean, unless Rattler is demonic. And if you want to hedge for that, maybe you could trade like a 4th round draft pick for Rattler. Although I wouldn't worry that much about it necessarily. But the difference with Shuck is that I see him more as a guy where he does have upside in terms of his traits, but like stylistically, I think he's a guy who is more going to be throwing it away a lot and being a guy who hopefully can avoid sacks enough and hit the right throws to be like a borderline starter backup dude. Like one of those type of guys would be his goal. Whereas with Milrow, it's like, I think the odds are a lot longer for him not only seeing the field this year, but like going forward. But if Milrow is if he could even become the 16th best if he could be the 20th best quarterback, he would be fantasy relevant in every single format because he is an unbelievable rushing threat. He would be phenomenal. His ceiling is incredibly high, and he doesn't even need to be like that great of a QB to do it. So yeah, I don't hate that pick here at the back end of round 2.
And then with my next pick, I'm going to do something even crazier.
We're off the rails.
I'm going completely off the rails now. I'm taking Xavier Restrepo in Tennessee. Hold on, I have to cough real quick. I'm taking Xavier Restrepo in Tennessee simply because he's already got the chemistry with Cam Ward, and he's got a lot of nuance in his positioning and in his route running. And I just think he's got enough skills that when you look at this receiving core and you're like, dude, it's not that good. It's really not that good. Like, his path to playing time really isn't that insane for a guy who's like at the bottom of the roster right now. So
I mean, they took Shamiri DK in round 4, the Titans. He's a wide receiver.
I know.
And Restrepo was an undrafted free agent.
And Cam Ward's gonna be like, that's my God. I need him. I need him. I watched the Miami offense last year, and I'm like, there is only one guy who like has any sort of nuance as to like being on the same page as Cam Ward ever, and it was Xavier Restrepo. So get that guy on the field, and I think we'll see some sparks at some point. Maybe it's this year.
It's your life.
It's my life, man.
It's your life. You're the hero of your own story. My
fantasy strategy, especially as we get into later rounds, is like, dude, what if?
You can do a lot of what ifing with a lot of guys. I think liking Restrepo is okay. I actually kind of do like his odds for an undrafted free agent, not for the first pick of the 3rd round. Personally, I think that's too rich. And I think if you like them, drafting him at all would probably mean that you get him even if it goes to a 4th round, right? So
yeah,
I've got guys who might be even crazier than that. So
oh boy.
But that brings it back to me with the 302. I'm going to pass on Shuck, even though he's my guy, for the sake of not spamming the quarterbacks here. And because I think Mason Taylor would be a pretty decent pick this late. Wasn't the absolute highest on Taylor, but I can't deny that he moves pretty well for a guy his size. And he was very solid at LSU. I think he's got some upside as a route runner potentially. And I think he's got a really good path to starting. Now, do I question the Jets offense? Yes, I don't trust, Justin Fields at this point to make a rookie tight end fantasy relevant, but we're well within the 3rd round at this point, and if we're taking shots, give me a guy who's got capital and I think has the skill to develop into a good player.
Yeah, I'm going to keep it with the tight ends here, Matt, and I'm going to take Arroyo from Tennessee. Injury concerns huge with him, but I also think that he's a great fit with Clint Kubiak. Like, he is a real vertical threat tight end. He's got legitimate juice downfield. Like, he can really open it up and sprint and actually outrun people. So to imagine him in the crossers game off the wide zone play action, like I was talking about with the Saints earlier, is pretty intriguing if he can stay healthy. He's a good blocker in the backside of the split zone stuff. If just, chop down the backside end. And I think that he's freed up to get a lot of production because the Michigan guy Barner is their blocker, and then this guy is their receiver. And I think the offense should be pretty good. I mean, better than the Jets offense, no offense, better than the Browns offense. And there's not that much competition. There's JSN, who should eat up tons of targets, but what does Cooper Kupp have left in the tank? Like, who outside? It's Jake Bobo and Torrey Horton, who might also come off the board here. But like, Arroyo has actually got a solid chance to be the second best receiving option in a pretty decent offense, I think. So I'm going with him at this point. I think he's good value. And then I'll go with Shuck just because he's a starting quarterback. Yeah. And he's going to be run the play action game, taking deep shots. Shaheed, Olave, like, maybe not too many attempts, maybe not too many rushing yards, but maybe he could pick them up in big chunks. And like you said, he's getting a shot. Like, Dart might not get a shot all year. Milrow might not get a shot the next 3 years. So give me Shuck.
Real.
Yeah, I like your argument for Arroyo. Honestly, it makes me want him a little bit over Taylor, but I think those guys are kind of within the same tier.
Until Arroyo gets hurt.
I mean, yeah, that's true. I mean, Shuck, I think he's going to start this year, and I really do think that he could. He's a little overhated. I don't want to put too many chips into the Shuck bag. And ultimately, I do think that it's an uphill battle for him, and his upside is not as great as Milrow. So I think this is a perfectly fair spot for him. After that, I don't know. I think I might lean Ferguson here, just off of the draft capital and the fact that I think I have some faith in Sean McVay. I don't think he's got a great path as a rookie tight end where there's already multiple other targets to like a bunch of work early in the season. I think you're saying long term, this is a guy who hopefully is going to be a vertical threat and work his way in there. But we've seen McVay tight ends be relevant before. He obviously likes him a lot and spent a lot of capital on him. And if he's getting up there and it's Stafford out there, I mean, Stafford's a good quarterback to be paired with. Now, can he get fantasy relevant? Like, will he develop before Stafford falls off? And do we care? Or will Sean McVay keep things rolling? I have some questions, which is why I'm not as high on, his capital. But here it's really good value.
Nice. I'm going to take two crazy receivers back to back here. Maybe one less crazy than the other. I'll start with the less crazy one. Tez Johnson probably falls on people's boards mostly because of the 40 time, the speed stuff. But I think he's just a solid receiver to have in Tampa Bay, even if he's not going to be a guy that's getting like a ton of touches this year. I think he's kind of like a future outlook kind of guy where, next year, who knows what the Mike Evans and Chris Godwin situation look like there. Maybe Igbuka's the one at this point. So, like, I think there's a world where at some point he's able to work himself into that room. But I wouldn't expect him to be a big presence this year. So that's kind of a future option for him. The other guy that I'm going to take is absolutely insane. Dante Thornton for the Raiders. That's the 4.3 speed guy that I'm going after. Great after the catch, just like insane speed down the sideline. I think he's going to be a guy that's looking at another receiver room. You're like, who's the next guy up there, right? I think Thornton could be a guy that eventually, even this year, could be getting some serious work and would be a good guy for Geno Smith to hit over the middle of the field in crossing and try and take stuff kind of up that sideline. So I'm a big fan of him. I went back and watched some of his Tennessee games. I was like, you know what, man, this guy's kind of This guy's kind of got some juice. He's a little bit of a one-trick pony, but it's a damn good trick.
The ghost of Al Davis will make you right. Tall, height.
I love Tez Johnson. You know, I love Tez.
I know you. Tez Johnson's your guy. I was worried you were going to take him before I could.
Oh, what the?
There has to be two wolves within you, I believe. There's analyzing the draft and then Dynasty fantasy football draft. I think personally you got to take into account draft position a lot. It's just, it's such an indicator over the long run. And ultimately, like, Dynasty fantasy football is about the spreadsheets more than anything. I mean, these are guys who have like the big time players, they have 25 leagues that they're in, and they'll make like 50 trades a year or whatever. And they're thinking like over the long run. So it's like, I don't think you have to think about it like that much. And like taking a dart throw in round 3 is one thing. Yeah. Even though his path to, I mean, he's hoping to be wide receiver like 5 early on.
I think he's currently like 6 on the depth chart. So like
he could be a dang good slot guy if the size doesn't get to him too much.
Right.
Thornton, I don't think is like that crazy of a stretch at all. He might not go that high in terms of like I don't know what his average draft position on the Dynasty boards. I should have looked at it before. But he was a high 4th round draft pick. That's about what we're doing right now, and I totally agree. Like, if he turns into a great deep threat, like it's a very winnable position. So if you were to like Thornton, I feel like you should really like the Raiders, where that needs a receiver, needs someone to step up in that role. And the 108 is, I mean, that's not a low position at all.
I thought that was going to be like the craziest pick I've made.
No,
no, you took the 3rd wide receiver that the Titans drafted. That's going to be the craziest.
That is Cam Ward's guy, brother. Trust.
Until he sees Alik Aomanor block.
Yeah.
And then he's going to be like, that's my guy now.
Yo, is that Robert Woods out there?
That's Robert Woods? Yeah, no. So, and then, until the coaching staff sees it and says, goodbye, Restrepo. We're cutting you or putting you on the practice squad.
And then Cam's going to hold out until they bring Restrepo back.
This fan fiction. The game is gone. Matt, who is your pick?
I'd probably go Tootin here.
Yeah.
I'm not like the absolute highest on him. I agree. I do raise my eyebrow at like, this guy is Bucky Irving. Like, I just don't think he's as good as Bucky was. I just think like what made the whole Bucky Irving thing happen? It wasn't that like Cohen was in there, and I just think that Rachaad White was like not that crazy talented. I don't think he's that crazy great of a runner, and I think Bucky Irving is. Like, I just think it comes down to being that simple. And Bucky Irving was just underdrafted because he was kind of small. And I'm not even saying like teams are stupid. Like, of course, lighter guys are going to go later or whatever. But okay, I think teams are real dumb. Like Bucky is just like, he just was doing things where you're like, it feels like that won't translate at his size. Like, it just doesn't quite seem to, and then it just did, right? Like he makes it work. Tootin, I'm not saying isn't explosive, but I don't think he's going to be like the guy there, honestly. I feel like he's going to be more of a change of pace type of back. And maybe there's a role that he carves out as sort of like that guy who can break off big runs. But I agree, even though Cohen's in there, and even though maybe I'm not the super highest on ETN, I'm probably taking him a little bit later. Although here, I think it's
here. I think it's great. I mean, both of the guys ahead of him are like, they're ahead of him for a reason, right? Like their names, they've had production, but they're not like that good. Like they're not unbeatable. And Tootin, he bounces off tackles, like really compact. He's got the 4.3 speed that he showed at the combine. Like he's a big play threat. Like ball security is my biggest issue with him. Like he fumbles kind of too much, but like he's shifty. He's got the contact, he balance. He's got the home run. Like he's in an offense that could see a huge boost to their run game with two guys who are beatable in front of him. Like I would have picked him next. So I like that pick.
If he's your guy, if he was your running back, like your sleeper before the draft, you should like the spot. I think that's how I view it. He just wasn't my sleeper, I guess.
Yeah. And then next, I'm going to take Jaden Blue from Dallas. Like they took a lineman. Shoddy's there. They want to run the ball, but who are their running backs? Right there's Javonte Williams, who was one of the least efficient ball carriers in football last year, and I like some of the things that Blue brings to the table. Like he is not a crazy contact balance guy, but he is very shifty and he can make you miss. And even though he doesn't have great contact balance, he isn't afraid and he has good vision, I think, between the tackles. Like he's not the most dangerous there, but he does get what he can, the easy yardage right up the gut. He's a good receiving threat. The line could be good. Like I could see it being kind of a sleeper pick for these dynasty things with where he's at. I mean, I'm even reaching on him compared to the boards that I'm looking at. Yeah,
I thought this would have been low. Maybe it's probably what it is that Blue is like a receiving, more type of guy, like typecast dude, I guess. And even if like he is landed in the most winnable spot imaginable in terms of the other running backs there, maybe the worry is that just like he's too one-dimensional and he just maybe doesn't have this pure rushing talent. I like him here though. I think that's a good pick.
And then I'm also gonna take. I might take Shedeur Sanders. Like, I think he's got main character. Like he's the main character. That's all I gotta say. Like, is he good? I don't know, but I do think that he is more talented than where he got picked. I do think once he started to slide, everybody was like, whoa, what's wrong with him? Like, we're not going to take, we didn't even think this was a scenario. So we're going to stick and pick the guys we thought would be here. Like maybe teams know something we don't, and we're just going to stick to our board. Like, I do think fifth was too low for him. And I think that it's a very winnable job in Cleveland. Don't you get the feeling we're gonna see him at some point? Like
so I'll give you my two perspectives on this. Number one, Jimmy Haslam made that pick, so like he is going to see the field at some point this year. That is a given.
Well, the coaching staff would choose who starts. Like he hasn't got him in the building, but if the
Shedeur Sanders has also been like very prominent on the Browns social media, so like
he has.
It's gonna be
how prominent he is on the social media, dude. They've been posting.
Well, as far as Theo said, he's main character energy, so like he's got that going for him. I think what we're gonna see, and I think I probably said this before, it's gonna be Flacco week 1. It's gonna be Gabriel probably week 7, and it'll be Shedeur Sanders by like week 14. Would be my guess. So
I just think that he's gonna get in before Gabriel. Like I just feel that down.
Like
even though the coaching staff picked Gabriel,
Kevin Stefanski picked Gabriel.
So maybe this is stupid and silly, but who knows? Who knows?
I wouldn't pick either of those guys just because I'm like the Browns' offense stinks. Even if one of those guys gets in, they're gonna be. I don't know. Like I don't know if I trust either of them to be that good under center in Cleveland. But
it brings me to the 311 is what we're on right now. So the 35th pick. I only get one more selection. There's a couple of guys who I better ranked above my dude. Sampson, Royals. Savion Williams is going to a good offense and has a high ceiling and had some pretty good draft capital. But I only get one shot to take my guy, so I'm going to take my guy, DJ Giddens.
Yeah,
I think is probably fair around this range. Obviously, he's behind Taylor, but I think that outside of that, I feel like he should be RB2. Taylor is also like, kind of banged up sometimes, and he might have a very good year, and Giddens doesn't see the field, but like, dude, I just think Giddens is such a talented runner. It's a bad situation. It's a bad spot, but the Colts will probably run a lot, and Giddens has just unbelievable wiggle. And he's so practical with it. He really stretches the boundary. Like, how crazy can you get while also not, like, being detrimental trying to get highlights off like it's 7-on-7? To me, he is the absolute peak. And I'm crushed. He did not, again, go to one of the situations where I think he could have been. There was a Bucky Irving. It just didn't happen. There's a couple of guys who could have pulled the true Bucky Irving. They just didn't quite land in the right spot. We'll get them next year.
Fair.
But Giddens
Martinez, bro. I'm not gonna take him because he's the fourth string, and like I like everybody ahead of him, but he could be too.
He had like off the field stuff that people were concerned about, but Martinez it would have been Martinez, maybe Scatabo going somewhere, although he's so like loved, he wouldn't even really count it as an Irving. And Giddens were the guys where I was like, I need them to go to a real big spot, and none of them really did.
That brings me to the last pick in the draft, and I'm going to finish it off with a banger. Will Howard, baby, in Pittsburgh. If you don't think he's going to play like at least half the season over Mason Rudolph, I think you're like dead wrong. Like there's no way.
Aaron Rodgers, though, he's coming. Like he has to be coming.
He's not.
He has to be coming.
He's not. There's no way.
I will bet you $50 that Aaron Rodgers is the week 1 starter.
We gotta put some like real podcast stakes on the line here. What could we do that's like podcastify?
$50.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
I'll bet you $50.
$50. Okay.
$50
That they just sign Aaron Rodgers. How about that? They sign Aaron Rodgers.
That they sign Aaron Rodgers eventually.
They just sign him. They sign him before week 1. Like
before week 1 is a good time.
I assume that means he's the preseason, like he's the season starter. But like, yeah. I bet you $50 they sign Aaron.
$50. Should we do before week 1 or before the Hall of Fame game?
Before the Hall of Fame game, whatever you want. Just
okay. The Pittsburgh Steelers will not sign Aaron Rodgers before the Hall of Fame game.
Okay. He might hold out to that might be a sneaky good value that he holds out till like one day before the season, so he doesn't have to practice.
Rodgers move where it's like it's week 2 of the preseason, we finally got him in the building, and
that could be sneaky.
That would be the ultimate.
It's like
final
Will
Rodgers
Howard look.
season.
It's like Howard and Rudolph looked horrible in preseason, and they're like, Rodgers, please.
And then he does it because he's been able to gallivant across like the Orient.
They'll give him $60 million and
training camp. But yeah, if Cam, I mean, I do think that he's going to be sneaky. Like again, like Will Howard in Pittsburgh does feel like Will Howard will eventually see the field, but I don't know,
dude. Like if it's him and Mason Rudolph, there is no chance Mason Rudolph starts more than half this. Like I would. Do I bet my life on that one that Mason Rudolph does not start more than half the season? Would you bet your life on it, Theo? You're notorious for doing that.
I would not bet my life on Will Howard, but I've already bet my life and lost too many times. So I think I've got to up the bet my life stakes. So no, I would not bet my life on that. But
okay, fair enough. Well, that is the full draft. I'm not going to rattle off all 36 picks because I don't have the wind for that right now.
I have the list in front of me.
You want to wrap? I have the list in front of me.
Last time somebody sent me a message of like, would have been nice if we had read off the list. I'm like, yeah, would have. Last time I did that. Let me.
Okay, you do it, Matt.
Starting from 1, it's Ginty, Hunter, Tet, Hampton, Ward, Golden, Warren, Henderson, Loveland, Burden, Egbuka, Judkins. That's round 1. 2 is Kyle Williams, Harvey, Caleb Johnson, Besh, Dart, Harris, Neal, Higgins, Noel, Scattaboo, or Noel, Fannin, and Milrow. And then round 3 is Restrepo, Taylor, Aurora, Shuck, Ferguson, Tez Johnson, Dante Thornton, Tootin, Blue, Shador, Giddens, Howard.
Hearing it out loud, Restrepo at the 3-1 is very funny.
That was reach. You did get the you reach graphic on that. It's okay, but it did show up.
Yeah, but he's got the hidden development trait, and it's gonna be peak.
Hidden development. I do like him. I do think that I do like him, but yeah, maybe he does. I thought I had one more round. I thought we had one more round. My priority undrafted free agent is Brashard Smith. Take him in fantasy. If he's going undrafted in these things, I should have taken him over Shador. Like he's in Kansas City, he can receive. Like he's got a real shot.
I would say the guy that maybe I would actually take over Giddens is maybe I would be interested in Tesla as an interesting sort of dude to take. Savion Williams, Pat Bryant, Royals, Sampson are all dudes that I think are probably also worth third-round draft picks if maybe it falls a little different or you're not playing in Superflex. And then if you want the super deep biased homer sleeper, I've heard good things about Jimmy Horn Jr., who I also liked pre-draft.
Hey.
So if you're looking for wide receiver 6th on a mid-level passing team,
Carolina Panthers
possibly,
legend,
or he could be on a practice squad, if not. But if there's a 6th round, I'm going.
I've also heard there's a wide receiver in Miami named Theo. So
shout out Theo Weiss. I actually kind of liked him. He outproduced Burden last year by kind of a lot. He could stick around too. But he was under. Did he even get drafted? He's not going in fantasy drafts.
Yeah, but
I don't think he's going super high. Yeah.
No, I'm seeing him as wide receiver 34.
Yeah.
Rookies. So, not great. But thank you all so much for tuning in to another episode of Stay Hot. That is our Dynasty rookie mock draft. Again, as we always say, these are 100% accurate, and anything that you hear otherwise is wrong. But until next time, as always, we love y'all for tuning in, and we will catch you on the flippity flop.